Hello everyone. This is the first of a series of new videos on how to improve your technique, how to improve your playing on the ukulele. Each video is going to be called 5 ways to do something. This particular one's called 5 ways to get a better tone on your ukulele. So these videos are really designed to improve your playing, improve how you play the ukulele. Let me first of all say what they're not about. I'm not going to be talking about buying a better ukulele, because buying a better ukulele isn't necessarily the best way of getting a better tone or anything else out of your ukulele. Or I'm not going to be talking about buying newer strings. Obviously you do need to change strings regularly, but buying new strings is something else. It's not really to do with this video or this series of videos. Neither will I be talking about using better recording equipment. I use some very nice microphones and these do make a difference, but we're talking really here on how you personally get a better tone out of your ukulele, whether you're recording it or not. And lastly, processing the recording. All recordings, whether professional or amateur, are processed. You get reverb added, EQ, compression. This isn't really the realm of these, within the realm of these videos either. It's not to do with what you do with the sound, it's how you get the sound out of your ukulele. So let's start with this one, 5 ways to get a better tone on your ukulele. We're going to start with number 1, picking technique. That's your right hand. Not strumming so much, but this time it's picking technique. Now, position of your hand. Your hand should be resting on the ukulele, whether it's in this area or this area, and your fingers should be going pretty much straight down. You can see that they're going straight down. Your thumb should be resting on or near the 4th string, and your other 3 fingers should be resting on the 3rd, 2nd and 1st string. Now there are occasions when you may want to play without using your 3rd finger, ring finger, and that's okay. But your fingers need to be near the strings and they need to stay near the strings. You don't need to be doing this sort of thing, because as you heard I made a mistake there. It's a terrible tone, and moving my hand away like this is just pointless, because you lose the tone and you become inaccurate. So hand position there. Finger positions, they need to be going straight down. Now let's look at how you pick. I have noticed a lot of people are picking like this. They've got their fingers curled under like a claw and they're sort of picking in that sort of way. And you can hear the sound is pretty terrible. Now, you need to be picking with either your fingernail or a combination of your fingernail and the fleshy part of your finger. But just plucking upwards, up that way, upwards from the ukulele is not a good idea. So don't curl your fingers under like that. Have them more going straight down. And you can pick in 2 ways. One is, it's called a rest stroke. It's where you pick a string. I'm going to pick the 2nd string and my finger's going to rest on the 3rd string like this. And that gives a nice full sound. But if you're doing a picking pattern, something like this, your hand should be still, the fingers moving. You don't need to be moving around like this. You certainly don't need to be moving up and down and out. Now it doesn't really matter what finger pattern, picking pattern you're doing. Here's another one. This time I'm not using my ring finger. And the fingers are moving upwards in this direction. Upwards towards my head, upwards in that direction, and immediately moving back into position for the next time you need to use that finger. So there's a way of improving your technique when picking, improving your sound, the tone. There, I'm not doing the rest stroke, I'm not resting on another string, but I'm just picking upwards in this direction, not upwards as in outwards from the ukulele. The second thing I would say is going to improve your tone is your fingernails. First of all, you do need fingernails. People who say, well, you don't need them, you can just use your fingers. That's true, but you're losing out on some of the possible qualities of tone that you can get with the fingernails. So your fingernails need to be long, but not too long. The most important thing is, though, they need to be smooth. I'll just put my ukulele down for a moment. Here's some things not to use when cutting your fingers of your picking hand. In my case, it's the right hand. Firstly, don't use scissors. You can use them with your fretting hand if you wish, but these give a very rough edge and you can hear that scraping sound on the strings. Sanding boards like this. Fine if you want to get rid of a lot of fingernail, but really it's going to give a very rough surface. Now I can't demonstrate this because my fingers are smooth, my fingernails are smooth. You want to try and get not only the top part smooth, but also the underneath part of your fingernail there. So what do you use if you don't use this sandpaper or scissors? By the way, I use this sandpaper for sanding down the saddle on instruments. Well, there's two things I can suggest. One is something like this. This is I think it's glass. I don't know what it's called, but it gives a very fine finish. Not quite fine enough if you're going to do a concert or something and you've got a lot of picking to do and you want to have a really, really beautiful sound. That isn't quite good enough on its own. You want something like this. Now this particular one is called Beautiful Shine, and we've got very, very fine, I don't know what you call it, it's not really sandpaper, but it does take your fingernails down to a nice finish, and this which will buff them up. And before concerts, what I used to do when I used to do a lot of concerts, I'd be backstage just before I was about to play and I'd be doing this with the inside of my finger, particularly the thumb, but the other fingers as well. Now what I'm doing is I'm putting it under my fingernail and buffing like that. You will be amazed how much the quality of the tone improves with smooth fingernails. Okay, so that's my second tip. Third, I was doing it then. It's something called vibrato. Vibrato is where you move your fingers back and forth, which adjusts the pitch of the sound very slightly in a rhythmic way. Now, where don't you do vibrato? Well, if you're playing an open string, it just gives the pure sound. But listen to the difference. You may not be able to hear it clearly, particularly if you're watching this video on an iPhone or something. But there is a difference, I promise you. And you'll see some players do vibrato, some players don't. The ones that don't, I think, haven't really discovered the technique. The technique is so important. But vibrato, now, one or two tips about vibrato. If you want to do vibrato, don't do it up and down like that. For a start, you can't move it fast enough. That's how you bend strings. You bend a note like this. Okay? Vibrato is done sideways like that. So you place your finger in the usual place, quite close to the fret that you're next to. And the vibrato goes at pretty much the same speed. It's got to fit in with the tempo of the piece. Now that's fast, but if you're doing it slowly, sometimes you can't avoid playing an open string, like there. I've got a reentrant tuned instrument here. I always play reentrant, and the C is the lowest note. If you need to play that C, you can't do a vibrato on it. Now, where don't you do vibrato? Well, there are certain styles where you probably wouldn't want to, but there's also when you're playing very fast. There's no point doing that, trying to do a vibrato on that, but you might be doing this. Okay, so when you get to a longer note, that's the time to do a vibrato. It works very well up here as well. Okay, now the ukulele has only got a certain amount of sustain, but it does help tremendously. Number 4, how loud do you play? Well, you need to play as loud as you need to play. If it's a piece of music and you want to actually make a contrast between a previous passage, you want to make it loud, then you play loudly. I'm going to play as loud as I can. And it sounds horrible. So you can only go so far, because once you try and play too loudly, the tone suffers. On some instruments, the string may bounce off the fretboard, but it just sounds pretty horrible. So listen, you can play quietly like this. And you'll notice the very loudest note there, the tone did change slightly, but it was still pretty good. You can get a fairly good dynamic range, that is, a range of notes from the quiet to the loudest, without going over the top. Finally, where to pick with your right hand. Now, we've already dealt with the position that you hold your hand in, but where do you pick? Well, there's 3 places. Over the sound hole. I usually play around about the middle, slightly towards the bridge. But you can play here on the fretboard. And it gives a slightly more hollow, open sound. The tone changes. Or you can play close to the bridge. Not right close. This is what happens if you go too close. It sounds pretty nasty. But you can move closer towards the bridge. Middle. Fretboard. It's not a case of one or the other two. It's a case of you can use all 3. On many of my videos, what you'll see is you'll see this hand moving to that position. So I might play something over the sound hole, and then, because I want a slightly different tone, also change the volume to slightly lower. So that's 5 ways to get a better tone out of your ukulele. Let me just briefly recap. Your picking technique, your hand position and the finger position is very important. Fingers going straight down. Your hand needs to remain fairly still, doesn't move about too much at all. Your fingernails, very important to have smooth fingernails, otherwise you get this rasping sound. It's like playing the strings with sandpaper. What you use to actually get your fingers smooth is important too. Vibrato. You can't use this on very fast notes, but you can use it on the long passages where you're trying to really make the tone beautiful. Vibrato. Use it more than less. In other words, most people need to use it more than they do. When you're playing loudly, you can only go to a certain volume before the loudness becomes really abrasive. And it's if that's the sound you're looking for, then fine. But if not, The ukulele's got a much better dynamic range than most people imagine. You can go from very soft to loud before the tone starts to get horrible. So how loud you play is important, and remember, put contrasts into your music. Don't play at the same volume all the way through. And finally, where you pick. Most people pick over the sound hole because that's what they've been told to do, and that gives the best overall sound, I would imagine, I would think. And I hold my fingers just slightly towards the bridge over the sound hole, but you can play it over the fretboard and you can get this lovely sort of fluffy, hollow sound. It's very difficult to describe sound in words, but it's certainly a different tone. It's very nice for quiet passages, or if you want to make a contrast, move from there to there. And finally, near the bridge is a much more trebly sort of sound, a thinner sound, slightly harder. And again, very good for creating contrasts. Anyway, there's 5 ways to get a better tone on your ukulele. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Look out for others in this series. There's going to be quite a few more. And I'm trying to find things that other people are perhaps not done in their own tutorials. I want to try and get people to play the ukulele in a different way. So 5 ways to get a better tone on your ukulele. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please give it a like or thumbs up, subscribe, and of course leave a comment if you can, because I love reading comments and I do reply to them all. So thank you for listening, and bye-bye.